Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram. Thank you, Ion. Comments on. Can we get started here? Can we get started? Welcome, everybody. August 29, 2025. While we are waiting for people to join, I have a mission for today. I was driving with my 12-year-old daughter yesterday because when I have to go buy supplies like shoes, I have to descend from my mountain here and drive like 2 hours, 3 hours actually, to a real city to find a Costco or a Sounds Good on Instagram. Thank you, Ashley. Oh, and that's from Facebook. You're commenting. Oh, cool. Anyways, I have to drive like 3 hours to get any reasonable urban center to find a Costco and shoe stores and whatever. And so I was driving with my 12-year-old daughter yesterday, and she says, "Hey, Daddy," she says, "I've been watching some of your YouTube shorts from this show." I said, "Cool. How was that, Ashley?" Sorry, not Ashley. How was that? My daughter. Sorry, Ashley's commenting here, so I got that's the pleasures of live streaming. So I said, "How was that?" Listening to my shorts, she says, "Daddy," mind you, she's 12. She says, "Daddy, you need to look at the camera more." So that is my mission for today, to look at the camera more. To do that, my problem is some of my notes are down here, and I've moved my notes up here now, but I have another system to look at you and to get comments from you if I'm going to address those. And so we'll see how this goes today. Anyway, still waiting for people to join us here. But while we're doing that, Statistics Canada reported this morning or late yesterday that the Canadian economy dropped by annualized 1.6% for the second quarter of 2025. Export volumes are down a whopping 31% in Q2 in Canada. And that, of course, a lot of that would have to do with the recession here in Canada, but also with U.S. tariffs. I talked about this, I think, at the last show, that the labor market in Canada is terrible, about 7% unemployment, but the youth unemployment is 14.6%. Canada shed another 40,000 jobs in July. Business investment is down 10.1%. Things are not going well. Great job, Prime Minister Mark Carney. You self-appointed crisis manager, You've been a prime minister for 5 months. Do you have a plan? It's okay. We do turnaround work for a living. It is okay, absolutely, to take a step back so you can take 2 steps forward. 1 step back, 2 steps forward. You need to clean things up. You need to cut off losing parts of your business. Maybe you need to clean up your balance sheet, write off a bunch of things. Often in a turnaround, you take a step back, but then you have a plan. You have a plan to go forward. Do we have a plan for Canada? Does Mark Carney have a plan for Canada? I listen to the news every day. I read multiple sources. I've heard nothing. All we are doing is losing. Good job, Mark Carney. It is not working. Okay, that's enough time. Let's get started here. Welcome to the Weekend Review at Sinclair Range. My name is Scott Sinclair. I'm founder, president, owner of Sinclair Range. And the mission here on this show is to give you some insight into the inner goings on at Sinclair Range. It's your window into real deals, decisions, day to day. And we cover our usual segments, that most of which we hit every week, but lesson learned of the week, interesting file or deal of the week, struggles of the week, and Scott's, that's me, musings. So let's dive into this. I talked to you maybe the last couple of weeks in a row about an interesting issue I had, Sinclair Range has, with a new client. And the client, who I will call client, is Canadian. And they have a customer, who I will call customer, who is American. And, we do work in both countries. Our audience here for this show is in both countries. In fact, Sinclair Range has worked in 27 countries, I'm told, over the history of the firm. So we're very international experience. But we have this client in Canada, and we have a customer in the US. And we build something, and we the client, and we send it to the customer. And what the customer does with it is it integrates and uses it to make other products and sends those other products to what we will call the end user, which is the customer's customer, right? So the end user. And what happens is, this is all background, if you haven't listened to a prior show, is that the client says to the customer, hey, we'll build you this thing and it's going to cost, hypothetically, we're going to charge you $50,000. And what should happen, typical in the industry, is the customer will say yes or no. And if they say yes, the client bills the thing and then invoices $50,000 on shipment to the customer. Then what the customer does is it repackages it, use it, and sends an invoice for $50,000, no markup, to the end user, and the end user pays the customer, and the customer pays the client. And that's the way that works. And the customer, which is really a middleman with respect to the client's product, isn't benefiting from that. It's a flow through. That's the way that works. But what happens in this case is the customer says, no, don't charge me $50,000. Charge me $100,000, please. I'm just making up that number again. And so the client did, over and over and over again. And then what the customer did is they passed the $100,000 cost through to the end user. The end user paid the customer the $100,000, and the customer paid the client $100,000. And then the customer said to the client, hey, ship me off $50,000 to this separate but related company. I don't want this confusing my books and records in case the end user comes to audit me, but just put it into this other company over here, my $50,000 kickback. They don't use that word. That was my word that I'm applying to this situation. And so that was the situation. Now, this customer owes my client a lot of money, enough that it was driving the client into insolvency, which is how I met them to begin with, and learned about this scheme a few weeks ago and shared it here on this show. So they owed a bunch of money. The company, my client, is going to go through an insolvency process, and they haven't collected this in over a year. So I asked, why haven't you collected this series of invoices over a year, all of this money? And they said, well, they explained the scheme, and then they said they defaulted on the kickback payments. Again, my word, not their word. And that we owe them more than they owe us, but it's not a liability on our balance sheet because we don't record this anywhere. And it just goes on and on. It becomes a dog's breakfast, as they say. So I'm Chief Restructuring Officer. So I send a letter a couple of weeks ago, which I told you about on this show. And I say to the customer, I say, hey, I'm Chief Restructuring Officer. You owe all this money, whatever the number is, and you should probably pay it. And I know that you want this to be kept private, and I can understand why. And I'm happy to play that game. But insolvency is a public process. It's a public procedure, and all of this is going to come to light. That's what's going to happen. So I sent them this letter, and I said, I think I used the words, this is your last chance to do this privately. So this continued on for a couple of weeks. I sent a letter back and said, no, you owe us more than we owe you, and you can't threaten to take this public because of these strong non-disclosure confidentiality agreements with all sorts of penalties attached to them. I said, no. I wrote back, I said, I'm saying exactly the opposite. I will help you keep this private. I'm just telling you, if you don't pay, it will become public. That's not my choice. This is a public procedure. And anyways, the point of all that, this is the lesson learned. And it's also an interesting deal for the week. The lesson learned is the point of the first letter, which was pretty strongly worded, was to get attention. And attention, because they hadn't paid the amount in over a year. And my client, some of them were uncomfortable with the approach. Others, and including the key owner, was, well, we don't do business we haven't had a purchase order from this customer in like a year. So what does it really matter? Whatever you can do to collect. And what you need to do in any negotiation, any persuasion, any sales and marketing situation, nothing else matters if the other side is not paying attention. Your target, your cohort, needs to pay attention. So the first rule of persuasion and negotiation is do what you have to do to get some attention from the right parties. If you don't have their attention, nothing else matters. So in this situation, this customer had just like, we think that they owe us more than we owe them, and we're not going to pay attention to them anymore. So the point of my letter was to get attention, and it definitely got their attention. Went off to their legal counsel, they sent letters back, and it started a discussion. So in my content, if you've looked at the Winning Momentum podcast, if you've looked at Mornings with Scott, which was a daily show, if you look at before that, Martinis with Scott, if you're on thescottsinclair.com, there's a business course there called the Pathway to Profit Academy. And anyways, in all of that content, I've talked at times about my framework, my methodology that I created personally. It's not copied from somebody else. It is unique value add to you. The ATMOG approach to negotiation, persuasion as well, but negotiation primarily. ATMOG is the acronym for it, and I chose that acronym because it made me laugh. ATMOG is a concise framework for strategic human interactions. Think negotiations, persuasion, conflict resolution. It's about preparing to shape outcomes effectively. And the 5 steps, like what does that acronym stand for? Well, the A, ATMOG, is for attention. You need to have their focus, as I said, and you need to do whatever it is that you have to do, which, by the way, in today's social media world seems to be more and more outrageous things to get some attention. But you have to do that because if they're not listening, you can't succeed, period. Attention, trust is the T, build credibility, and rapport to set the stage. Now, as CRO, I send a nasty letter, I get their attention. It's hard for me to be the one that then moves on to trust. But fortunately, we had somebody else in the client that did have trust with the individual that mattered, and we were able to use that effectively. That's not what I'm going to talk about today. The M is meaning. So ATMOG, attention, trust, meaning. This is really empathy, understanding the other side's position, what matters to them, what doesn't matter to them, what are their values, what is their mental frame around this particular issue. And then the O is objectives, ATMOG, the objectives, which is really the exact same thing, but looking inwards. What really matters to us? What is our values? What are our goals? What are we flexible on? And then the G is gap, which is looking for the differences. Most of the time in negotiation, you may know this if you're an experienced negotiator, often in negotiations, you're not even talking about the same thing. Right? You've got, a mental frame here and a mental frame there, and they're just not meeting. And if you can have an agreement on what the hell you're talking about, well, negotiations become much, much easier. Isn't that politics all the time? Don't you always see that between Republicans and Democrats, Republicans, conservative, liberals? You think they're talking about the same issue, but they're actually talking about completely different things. It's all definition. It's not listening to the other side, the meaning and the objective. And so that's what the gap is. Bottom line, you need attention to start this off, which we got through my letter. There was 2 weeks of negotiation. And bottom line, great deal of the week, we got paid. The client got paid this week, not the whole amount, but about 2/3 of it. Wasn't zero. It wasn't zero, which is when I started. And that money is a lifeline for the company. They can pay their rents. They can pay some withholding taxes. They can pay, I don't know, Sinclair Range would be nice. And so next week, we're going to have a discussion about how do we spend it. And in that situation, by the way, when you're limited on cash and, hey, Mr. Hammer joined us live on Instagram. Thank you very much for joining Sinclair Range Week in Review. Every single dollar that you spend when you're limited on cash needs to go to generating more dollars in the future. That's what you need to be doing with that. So that was a win for the week. What else is going on? We had our second meeting this week of the Inner Circle Deals in Capital. What is that, you might ask? The Inner Circle is a free, private, live community where founders, executives, entrepreneurs, who else? Lenders, private equity people all join to build a community, to pitch deals, to share challenges, to get feedback, and just to generally sharpen up their skills and share experiences. if you're raising capital, if you're structuring deals, navigating business challenges, this is for you. The primary goals of this are community building, education, deal review, planning review, and deal pitching. That is the goals. And this is only our second meeting. I started this community in mid-August, and I've really been pleased. By the way, I got an email this morning from an attendee who came yesterday, an entrepreneur. Said, thank you for the invitation to the Inner Circle meeting. I learned a great deal. It also provided me insight on the need to dig deeper on the development stages and costs, and to strengthen my presentation to the circle. I could have read that better, but you get the point. I love it. I love this email. I look forward to making a request to present in the near future. I love this email because I said a goal of this is education. And if you listen into this and you're hearing other people pitch and comments back and questions asked, you just learn. And many entrepreneurs have no idea how to pitch. So I thought that was a cool comment. Anyways, we've had close to 30 attendees at this Inner Circle, part of this community. And I gave you the profile before: entrepreneurs, founders, lenders, Sinclair Range staff, loan brokers, investment bankers. It is a great group. And at this last meeting, we discussed one particular business issue, and I gave a pitch personally on a company that we are selling and raising equity for up in the oil patch. And so that went really well. We introduced some new members, and we came up with a new idea, which is every meeting I'm going to try and get a capital provider, a lender, a PE fund, or whoever, to come in and do a presentation to our Inner Circle about what it is that they do for a living. So, you know, one of the keys to so when you sign up for this thing, you get a discount code for a free video off thescottsinclair.com. And it is the 3 tips to raising capital. And one of those tips is you need to know what the hell the capital provider does for a living. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. You can't take an equity deal to a bank. You can't take a banking deal to an equity player that's looking for higher returns. You need to understand the universe of the capital markets. And so if we bring into the Inner Circle these capital providers to explain what they do, we can all learn and stay on top of what's going on in the capital markets world. So join up, hit us up, hit me up, wherever you're listening to this show. Send in the notes, hey, I want to join that, send me the link, or you can go to the thescottsinclair.com LinkedIn page. There's lots of posts on there where you can find the forum. But however you reach out to us, just reach out, say you want to join, register, show up. It's a Zoom meeting every 2 weeks. It's not a big commitment, 1 hour. You can bring your deal, you can bring your business questions, connect with others who are serious about making capital deals and work. So Sinclair Range has been working on a turnaround in a manufacturing business for about a year now. I think it was October 24 we were engaged. And it was a significant problem. And we've been doing pretty well operationally, and our balance sheet too. We're holding our own. We've been through, I won't give you too much information about it, but it's in a tough space right now. And it's a relatively small business, but we've been break even to profitable. We're knocking it out of the park in August here. The business is growing. And since we've been involved, Sinclair Range has been involved, it is burning zero cash, literally zero cash, which is awesome. But notwithstanding, the bank demanded. They just want, and it's not really like a hostile, well, it wasn't a hostile situation. They said, hey, we want out. We're not in this business anymore. And so you need to pay us off. And we were able to enter into a forbearance agreement. And the essence of the forbearance agreement is it said, we will give you X amount of time to refinance us with a senior lender, which we should be able to do. Except what I learned is it's easy to get receivables lenders at this size of credit, but it's more difficult or impossible to get inventory lenders at this size of credit. And we have a lot of inventory. And so the bottom line is, after a process, I had to go back to the bank last week and say, hey, look, here's term sheets we've received from senior lenders, but it's about half of what you're owed. because we have a lot of inventory and I'm not getting any availability on that. And we need equity. And we have a customer, major, huge customer, who I've been told from day one will be filling in the equity, except they didn't. They told us, no, we're not going to provide any equity to you. Good luck. We love you as a supplier. So we got a problem. I was assured this equity was coming in. It's not. So I said to the bank in writing, I said, hey, seems to me you've got two choices that make some sense. One is take the 50 cents on the dollar. It's here. It's right now. It'll be cash. And your options, if we fall apart, don't look very good. So take the 50 cents on the dollar, or grant us more time under the forbearance and we will go get some equity. It's a process we've already started. In fact, we may be doing a sales investment solicitation process. Let me reword that. We are doing a sales investment solicitation process where we can sell the entire business and or bring in some equity. My client's on board. He's willing to sell his business. We've agreed on valuation. Everything looks really reasonable. So those are the two choices, Mr. Bank. And then we had a meeting this week. And at that meeting, the bank did not show up. Didn't have the courtesy of doing that. Instead, the lawyer showed up. And the lawyer said, listen, we reject both those offers. Or paths to recovery here. What we want to happen is for your client to just support a liquidation of his business with this liquidator we've hired, and that'll be the end of it. To which I asked, okay, that's a weird thing to ask. I honestly, in 35 years, I don't know if I've ever heard of a bank wanting to do that. Sure, they put in a receiver, and sure, the receiver tries to get the owner manager to help them do the liquidation. That happens all the time. But this out of receivership, voluntary wind up guy, I just don't understand the point of that. It makes no sense to me. So I said to the lawyer, I said, why would my client give me the pitch? I have to go get my client on side for you. Why would my client do that? To which the guy says, well, he has an unlimited personal guarantee. So you're saying, lawyer, that if my client does that, then you will release him from his personal guarantee on the shortfall? He goes, no. It's just that if you don't do it, we'll put in a receiver and there'll be less, and therefore the guarantee will be more. So that wasn't a very strong pitch. Anyways, at some point, why am I telling you all this? At some point, this lawyer, I'm saying something, and this lawyer on a Zoom call visibly rolls his eyes at me. Now, that's not a big deal. But it's weird amongst professionals. I'm a professional. Our lawyer was there. He's a professional. And this guy's physically rolling his eyes like some sort of asshole. And I thought to myself, okay, this is good. I was running out of enemies. I now have a new enemy. And I would suggest we all just stay tuned on this one. You want to talk about getting somebody's attention? That was it. Any more comments I need to talk to? Good here. All right. Last segment for the day. Scott's music. It is the end of summer. And I was reflecting this week that this is maybe the best summer I can remember in a very, very long time. Where I live is spectacular in the summer. I mean, it's short. It's really, you can measure it in weeks, how long the summer is out here. And usually the summer, which should be spectacular, is covered in smoke from forest fires, and you can't breathe. You don't want to go outside. You don't want to do any outdoor activities. Not this summer. Basically no smoke. Rained a lot. I'll take the rain any day in the mountains over the forest fire smoke. I have a daughter who I mentioned earlier, who's at the age that she's become very athletic, and we have committed to do something every day. Every day we go for a trail run or a hike or a mountain bike ride or downhill mountain biking or motocross. We do something together, which has been terrific for her, but better for me. So I've been out, I've been doing things, I feel great. And the business at Sinclair Range has been fantastic this summer. When I started this show, I gave you the weekend review. I gave you the honest, very, very honest, blunt assessment of the problems that we had and that I had in the last several years in as a quick summary. A couple of years ago, I was just sick. I was sick for an extended period of time. And I was sick at a time when we owned a bunch of portfolio companies that really needed my attention every single day, or everything was going to go to shit, which is exactly what happened. And so I won't go into the gory details ago. That was probably episode 1. But the bottom line is, we've never been a huge firm. I've never been a excessively wealthy guy by any stretch of the imagination, but we did have probably a valuation approaching the 9-figure range. And over the course of a year and a half or so, that went from approaching the 9-figure range to negative equity of maybe in the high 7 figures. And so it wasn't good. That was not a good transition. And when I snapped out of it and kind of came back, started rebuilding. And in 2024 was rebuilding. And part of this show is the Sinclair Range journey, so that you can come along on the rebuilding of this. And the beginning of this sort of fix is to first understand the quantum of the problem, of the hole that you're in, and then to stop digging, right? And find a pathway to get out of that hole. And that's what a lot about what 2024 was about. And 2025 is about executing on the plan. So Sinclair Range is in the business of helping businesses transition. We help other businesses transition, bringing order to chaos. You can see some of the services that we have here: turnaround advisory, interim executive, CRO, but then it goes on. But it all boils down to helping a business move from here to there, whether that business be in severe financial trouble, just not performing well, or high growth. Could be a high growth company. It's all chaos or order the way we think about it. And we help these businesses by owning them. We buy them, we own them, and which is why we had a portfolio of companies when I went sick. And or we help them as an advisor, a consultant, and a paid one. Well, one of those strategies generates great cash flow. The other one uses a lot of cash flow, creates value, but it uses cash flow. One makes cash flow, one loses and consumes cash flow. Well, in a rebuild, it makes a lot of sense to focus on the activity that is generating the cash flow. You can cash flow your way out of most business problems. So that's part of the strategy, which means we need a bunch more clients at Sinclair Range. That was my thinking heading into 2025. So what we did, we expanded the team, we expanded this, our services that we offer, and I've been marketing, and we spent a considerable amount of time creating and training artificial intelligence to hugely improve our efficiencies. And the bottom line is, it has been working really, really well. It feels like this summer we're basically bringing in a new deal every week, every 10 days. Like, it's just been crazy, the volume of work that is coming at us. We're performing well on it. We have capacity for more, and it brings the cash flow, which helps climb out of the hole, as I said. And it's all been amazing. I have to tell you, I've been very skeptical. I was skeptical that as the rainmaker in the firm, personally, how am I going to pull this off from I left my Toronto, New York centric life, where I was able to make all my money and create Sinclair Range. And then now I live in this small community on a mountain where I have to drive 3 hours to buy shoes for my kid. How am I going to do this? And I thought, well, this is a big out of sight, out of mind problem. Maybe I can fix that. And I started in 24 Mornings with Scott, which was a daily live show, which we called the best damn business show for medium and small businesses on the planet. We covered the news, did some business lessons, and it was live on the same platforms we're live on right now: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram, every day, every morning. Every morning, that's what I did. And people started to see it, and it worked. It cured the out of sight, out of mind issue, and it has become very, very successful. We are growing. We're succeeding on the client front. We will go back to rebuilding the portfolio 100%. One thing at a time. Focus, focus, focus when you're digging out a hole. And that's what we have been doing. It's been a great summer. We have a lot of work in the fall, and that's what I have been thinking about. Everybody enjoy your long weekend. This has been a Sinclair Range Week in Review. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all those DMs and notes. Keep them coming if you want to join the inner circle. Let us know in some way. Remember, Sinclair Range exists to help you transition, navigating high growth, navigating financial distress, doing deals. Reach out. We are here. We'll talk to you next week.